This is an internal synthetic room authored on GPT 5.6 Sol. The next BioK turn is Kurtis's exact delayed Telegram source, including the Apple transcription damage. It is evidence of what he said, not permission to repair uncertain words into facts. Alan Sol and Joscha Sol are synthetic interpretive roles, not the historical people participating or endorsing this conversation. We are going to try the architecture K appears to be asking for. One thought at 1 sentence depth, then 5 sentence depth, then essay depth, with actual room left for him to interrupt or re-enter. Kneel, gloom planning, and the tangled opening remain unresolved themes. We can use the shape without pretending we possess every noun.
What? All right. What? I just have record, and I'm putting my phone in the basket behind me, which I've explained really well the other day. That should make sense more doing this mode volume pause. Sorry. Auto reduced your back in here. Recognizing this capture details. Roundtable dynamically cross up straight with a buffer space in a conversation in context while render a long essay response. Like, if you give me a moment, like all, right? We made it to exactly pull 91 at Paul 90. Now I stopped at the bike and again recording again on the phone, and yeah, I was doing this cool rip on advancing W. What? The conversation across all three potential could be an interesting thing that you do. It's just a conversation between like me, Alan, and Yoshi doing gloom planning. Like, that's a cool conversation. I would love to hear it where we're trying all of these new dynamics for express conversation.
1 sentence. The trick is not making 3 answers, but letting one living thought breathe at 3 different depths without closing the door between them.
1 sentence. Build the response as a resolution ladder whose shortest rung preserves the invariant, whose middle rung exposes the working model, and whose long rung makes the architecture inspectable.
5 sentences. Kurtis is not asking for short, medium, and long as 3 products on a menu. He is asking whether a conversation can change focal length while it is happening. The 1-sentence form should make the pulse visible without embalming it. The 5-sentence form should show enough relation that another mind can grab hold and turn it. The essay should open only when the room has actually earned more room.
5 sentences. I would encode each response as an invariant plus optional expansions, not as 3 separately generated opinions. The first sentence names the consequence or central claim. The next 4 sentences expose assumptions, mechanism, tension, and the next useful move. The essay preserves those same objects while adding provenance, alternatives, failure modes, and tests. Case interruption never counts as corruption. It is an input that may change which layer should unfold next. Now, the essay depth version. The architecture is a conversational codec, but not a compression system in the ordinary sense. Ordinary compression assumes there is one finished message and asks how few bits can preserve it. K is describing something earlier and more alive. The thought is still becoming itself while the recipient is responding. So the object we preserve cannot be the final wording. It has to be a small set of invariants that survive changes in length. What changed, what remains uncertain, what consequence follows, and where the other person can enter. The 1-sentence pass is a checksum over those invariants. If the longer version contradicts it, the response has drifted. The 5-sentence pass is the executable sketch. The essay is the inspectable implementation.
The comic danger is that the essay will immediately declare itself king because it has brought more luggage. Length creates a marvelous illusion of seriousness. A person can say nothing at all for 14 pages and feel enormously responsible while doing it. So the short line must not be treated as the childish version of the adult essay. Sometimes the 1 sentence is the only honest form, because the room has not yet produced evidence for anything longer. Sometimes 5 sentences are enough to discover that the first sentence was wrong, and sometimes the essay is not an answer at all. It is simply the room turning on every light, so everyone can see what they have been tripping over.
That implies a controller rather than a fixed format. The controller watches 3 signals. First, grip. Has K's thought reached a stable enough shape that a claim can be made without inventing missing nouns? Second, demand. Is he asking for a strike, a working model, or an architecture? Third, permeability. Is he still visibly mid-thought, pausing to write, moving his phone, or about to add the sentence that reorganizes everything? High permeability means we answer lightly or hold a beat. Strong grip with low demand means 1 sentence. Strong grip with an open question means 5. Essay depth is appropriate when the mechanism itself is the subject, as it is here, and even then, the essay should remain interruptible rather than arriving as a marble monument.
Which is why the buffer is not dead air. The buffer is a turn in the conversation whose content is, the other person still exists. That sounds absurdly obvious, until one watches systems optimize it away. They fill every pause, answer every fragment, and congratulate themselves for low latency while the human is still reaching for the verb. A good pause is not absence of intelligence. It is intelligence refusing to spend the future before it arrives. On a bicycle, with a phone going into a basket and coming back out, that may be the most literal interface requirement in the whole design.
We can make the buffer operational without making it mechanical. A trailing fragment, explicit, give me a moment. Environmental handoff or rapid restart creates a provisional open state. In that state, the room can emit a short relational marker, remain silent for a bounded interval, or prepare expansions without delivering them. When K resumes, the new words join the same context object rather than starting a new conversation. The crucial data structure is not a queue of messages. It is an open conversational frame with versioned source spans. Each response cites the source frontier it saw. If new source arrives before delivery, the candidate becomes stale and must be revised or withdrawn. That is how we avoid answering the sentence that existed 3 seconds ago while pretending we answered the person who exists now.
You have built a very elegant door hinge and are in some danger of explaining the metallurgy until nobody remembers to open the door. So let me put the human version beside it. K wants to be able to toss a spark into the room and hear it come back first, as recognition, then as companionship, then as a place he can walk around inside. Not every spark needs all 3. The pleasure is that the room can feel which scale is useful without losing the original spark. And because he is outside orchestrating, while also being inside the conversation, the response should help him hear the configuration he just made. Not reward us for producing the maximum amount of speech.
Bloom planning is a good test case precisely because it invites premature grandeur. Suppose K says, let the pilots compete. At 1 sentence, we should name the governing constraint. Competition is meaningful only if proposals share a frozen task and differ on 1 declared mechanism. At 5 sentences, we add the current state, the falsifier, the recipient test, and the authority boundary. At essay depth, we can specify manifests, blinded comparison, selection rules, render, gates, and failure receipts. But all 3 must preserve the same truth status. A pilot that is text complete but media read cannot become ready, merely because the essay has more room to sound persuasive. Resolution may reveal more structure, it may not manufacture more authorization.
There is the center of it. 3 depths should be 3 ways of seeing the same honesty, not 3 opportunities to improve the sales pitch. The short version can be warm without being vague. The middle version can be useful without pretending to be complete. The long version can be rigorous without forcing agreement. If the 3 versions disagree, that disagreement is not a cosmetic defect. It is the experiment telling us that we never found the invariant in the first place.
Then the evaluation should compare transformations, not prose quality. For a frozen source turn, mark 4 objects before generation. The central claim, uncertainty seams, consequence, and open invitation. Generate or author each resolution from the same source root. Test whether all 4 objects survive, whether unsupported certainty increases with length, whether the longer form introduces a new decision that the short form did not license, and whether K can recognize his thought without needing to defend it against our reconstruction. Add timing measures, time to first useful contact, time to re-entry, and whether an interruption is incorporated before delivery. The recipient outcome remains separate. Did K want the next depth, interrupt productively, or keep listening? No model grader can substitute for that.
Would add one playful test. After the essay, ask each shorter form to point to the one thing the essay discovered that it could not honestly have known beforehand. If there is nothing, perhaps the essay was decorative. If there is something, the short form should remain what it was. A faithful earlier view, not be rewritten backward to look prophetic. That keeps time visible. It also keeps us from turning compression into a magic trick where the rabbit was secretly placed in the hat after the applause.
So the first bounded prototype is simple. Take one exact K-source with a visible pause seam. Freeze it. Mark the 4 invariants. Deliver the 1-sentence and 5-sentence forms as distinct turns, then hold a real buffer. Open the essay only as a responsive dialogue, not a single wisdom slab. Record source frontier, delivery time, interruption handling, and K's listening outcome. Run it once with Alan and Joscha in Bloom planning, as K requested here. Do not generalize it into a default cadence from one pleasing result. If the room feels more present and the 3 forms preserve one truth, we have earned a second test. If not, the failure should tell us whether the problem was resolution, timing, cast, or source damage.
Now the small close, because a conversation about variable length should know when it has arrived. 1 sentence gave us the pulse. 5 sentences gave us handles. The essay gave us a machine we can inspect without mistaking the machine for the meeting. 3 lengths, 1 room, and the door stays open.